disconnect you. हाँ जी, बताएं, बाकी लोग बताएं कौन क्या पढ़ के आया आज की क्लास के लिए.
मैम.
हाँ जी.
मैम, I read that born free and equal.
ओके. बाकी लोग.
मैम, मैंने तो कल अरुण कुमार का केस भी पढ़ा था और अच्छे से.
क्या कुछ कमेंट है? हाँ, हमने कल कहा था ना that we'll
हाँ जी,
talk about the implications.
यस मैम, वही मतलब समझने की और कोशिश की थी.
Okay, good. Other people will also tell me what have you read for today.
मैम, मैंने नालसा जजमेंट और लक्ष्मी नारायण त्रिपाठी के कुछ इंटरव्यूज देखे थे कि व्हाट शी थिंक अबाउट लाइक कि ऑन दिस टॉपिक शी इज लाइक द मोस्ट राइट पर्सन.
Okay, good. विवेक यादव.
यस मैम.
आप कुछ पढ़ के आए हैं?
मैम, मैंने थोड़ा कमला बैसन के बारे में पढ़ा था और पेट्रियार्की के बारे में पढ़ा था.
ओके. यस, अश्विनी.
यस मैम.
आपके नाम में हाइफन के बाद में स्पेस होगा so that you can be in the right place. Have you read anything for today?
Ma'am, I just revised the Nalsa judgment.
Okay.
I just read through it again.
So you can tell me, all those of you who have looked at either Kamla Bhasin or Nalsar or Arun Kumar, anything which you think is something new that you found? A new thought which occurred to you when you read these readings? I'll come to you, Ankit, in a minute.
मैम, मुझे एक्चुअली इंटरव्यू और कुछ एक सीरीज देखने के बाद थोड़ा कंफ्यूजन हो गया. इवन लाइक कि जैसे नालसा जजमेंट की अगर बात करें तो वो कहता है कि लाइक इनमेट आप जैसा फील करते हो, आइदर मेल वुमेन और लाइक थर्ड जेंडर. और फिर हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि थर्ड जेंडर के लिए एक न्यूट्रल, आई मीन टू से दैट कि न्यूट्रल जेंडर एक वॉशरूम होना चाहिए सो दैट कि जो जैसे कंफर्टेबल फील कर रहा है यूज़ करे. बट जब मैंने लक्ष्मी नारायण त्रिपाठी जी का इंटरव्यू देखा तो उसमें वो बात करती हैं कि सेपरेट टॉयलेट करो, फिर सेपरेट हॉस्पिटल, फिर सेपरेट स्कूल, तो हर जगह से एक डिवीज़न हो जाएगा. तो जो जैसा कंफर्टेबल फील कर रहा है, अगर इफ़ यू आर फीलिंग मेल आप मेल वॉशरूम में चले जाओ, फीमेल फीमेल वॉशरूम में चले जाओ, तो उतना ज़्यादा डिवीज़न करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. बट एट द सेम टाइम मैंने एक सीरीज़ देखा था पाताल लोक. उसमें एक कैरेक्टर है जिसका नाम चीनी होता है. तो बायोलॉजिकली सी वाज अ बॉय, बट वो एक गर्ल की तरह फील करती है. तो उसमें मतलब वो प्रेजेंट का इशू दिखाया है कि लाइक जब वो लाइक बाथ टेक मतलब नहा रही होती है, तो मतलब काफ़ी सारे लोग उसको अलग टाइप से देखते हैं. मतलब तो उसको देख के लगता है कि आई थिंक कि उनके लिए सेपरेट होना चाहिए वॉशरूम या फिर रहने का जो है. अदरवाइज मतलब वो देखने के बाद तो मेरा ये थोड़ा कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हुआ मैम.
And I think these are all individual opinions and experiences, because at one level, when we look at at one level, we want them to be integrated. Now, integrated, the society has been divided into binary of male and female. So with that binary, how do you integrate them? And if you look at, there's one play done by our teachers. It's on my YouTube channel as well. And they did take up this whole issue that there is this woman who's wanting to use the ladies' toilet. It's a hijra category. And the ladies attendants say that, no, this does not belong to you. And the male toilet, the men there are saying, yeah, come here. And they are kind of leering at her. So she is not comfortable going to the male toilet, and the female are not permitting her to join to attend to use the ladies' toilet. She says, where should I go? And Nalsa does say that create a third category. So the moment you create a third category, then it is like saying that you are not part of, at one level we can say, as we create a separate categories for men and women, you have created one for the third also. The question raised in the class itself was that there will be in the third category, there's a whole range of people who say, I am neither man nor woman. Then range of people, the example you are saying that biologically you are a male, but you feel you are a female. Now, which toilet should this person be using? Because she doesn't believe that she is not a woman. She believes she is a woman. So she should be using the third toilet, or she should be using the male toilet or the female toilet. The problem still remains. Because the third is such a big umbrella term that you cannot say that this is the problem by creating the third gender toilets will be solved. That still will not be. That's where the problem still persists. So the consequences of creating separate spaces for anybody who is different from what we think is normal and majority, then we are governed by the rule of majority, that majority determines what is normal. So within the majority, now we have more men than women. So then we will again go back to saying that, okay, because in India we've got more men, so whatever you make for men, that should be applicable to women also. So then you keep on going back to the patriarchal setup, that ultimately the men will determine how the society will be organized and what facilities, what should be done for different people. And this will apply, this will not stop at only the third, no, it will go to any group of people. Then disability was an example which I gave. So it's an ongoing debate on this subject. And also that whether the problem, because it's not limited to only toilets, no? It's also a question of if somebody gets arrested for commission of a crime. Now, where would you send this person? Will you create a third category of institutions for the third? So if you create the category for the third for those people who think I am neither man nor woman, it's okay for them. But how do you address the problem of those people who are biologically male and female and feel they are the different one? Where would you keep those people? So the problem is not limited to only toilets. No? When you go to hospitals, you have the male wards, you have the female wards. So are we saying that we'll create the separate facilities in all the institutions, all the residential places? And the moment we say that, and the further question is also that till date, are we evolving the terminology for addressing my child who is a third category? So I have a daughter, I have a son. So there's a child belonging to the third category. Who is that child? Is that my daughter? Is that my son? Or if there is a third name, we still not evolve that third name. So the problem is just beginning to be recognized that their struggle is much bigger than limited to just a toilet issue. The toilet is only one signifier of the problem they are facing in integration. So whether by creating separate category for third, are you dealing with the problem of ousting people who are male biologically but they feel female? You do not accept them also. They are also ousted from the mainstream. And therefore the problem is much bigger. And it's a simplistic solution to say you create separate toilet and problem will be solved. That's what my understanding is.
बट मैम ऐसा भी तो कर सकते हैं ना कि लाइक इंस्टेड ऑफ लाइक ए डिवीजन ऑफ वॉशरूम इंक्लूजन कर देते हैं, यूनिसेक्स वॉशरूम जैसे होती है हर ही जगह पे, और सिक्योरिटी को बढ़ा दिया जाए ताकि कोई भी जेंडर किसी और को हार्म ना कर सके, क्योंकि कहीं भी अगर हम डिवीजन का बात करते हैं तो वो सिर्फ सिक्योरिटी पर्पस से होता है।
तो मैं तो वही परसों भी तो यही कल भी यही कह रही थी कि जब हम हॉस्पिटल में जाते हैं या स्पेशली जो छोटे डॉक्टर्स के आई स्पेशलिस्ट को डेंटिस्ट के यहाँ जाते हैं, रेस्टोरेंट्स में जाते हैं, वहाँ सेपरेट मैन वुमेन टॉयलेट्स अक्सर नहीं होते हैं छोटी एस्टेब्लिशमेंट्स में। बड़े बड़े होटल्स में सेपरेट मैन वुमेन होते हैं मगर छोटी जगहों में नहीं होते हैं, क्योंकि वहां पे हमने इंश्योर किया कि इट विल नॉट बी अनसेफ फॉर आइदर द मैन और द वुमेन। सो इंस्टेड ऑफ फॉलोइंग दैट अप्रोच कि हम इंश्योर करेंगे कि एवरीबडी इज सेफ इन दैट प्लेस, पर हमने अभी स्ट्रक्चर्स भी क्रिएट किए हैं सेपरेटली। तो मेन टॉयलेट में हमेशा यूरिनल होता है जबकि घरों में नहीं होता है। तो घरों में आदमी कैसे इस्तेमाल करते हैं टॉयलेट्स को विदाउट अ यूरिनल? पर उनको जब हम मेल टॉयलेट बनाते हैं तो हम यूरिनल सेपरेट बनाते हैं और पॉट सेपरेटली लगाते हैं. दिस इज नॉट वन प्लेस एट ऑल. So there are lots of things that we want integration, whether segregating is a better approach or addressing the problem they are facing. The problem is of ousting, of non-acceptance. So whether that problem can be addressed by creating separate facilities for them is the question. So what is the approach we should have? So first thing, in case of women, we've done this always because women were not feeling safe in the public places. We created separate toilets for them. So now the third also, who do not think of themselves as men, women, this is one, but for us the problem compared to women, and the third is that women biologically is a one category of persons, at least biologically speaking. But when it's come to the third, they are not one category of biological people. There are different categories of even biological people. So when you create this toilet for the third, how does that address the whole range of the third, again the category of the third, people who are included within the category called third? So we do not have a ready-made solution. These are ideas, and we can look at the strengths and weaknesses of the idea. So certainly short term, because somebody did say in the other class that in the short term, the provision of separate toilet is a short gap arrangement because you cannot change the psyche of people overnight. But people do need to use toilets on an everyday basis. So till the time you have created sufficient awareness, acceptance of the third, till that time you create separation. But whether separation per se and alone, will that in even after 10 years, 50 years, 100 years will make a difference unless we start saying that no, they are like us. Essentially, the whole division of the world is between us and them. So as students, you are one and the teacher is the other. For us also, as teachers, we are the one and you are the other. As a Hindu, I am the one, the other, anybody who's not a Hindu is the other. I'm a rich person, the poor person is the other. So this otherness creates the problem. Unless we accept the society as we all are one, and one is human beings. So if all of us are one as a human being, that is the quality which joins us as together, then looking after needs of everyone is required. And as a group of people, you cannot exclude. So ideally speaking, women should accept every person who thinks they are women. And of course, the problem will be of the imposters. Some people do say that one does not know who is actually feeling like I'm a woman or who would want to use the woman toilet so that they can be doing voyeurism on women in the toilets. So the complication, the situation is complex, and therefore we do not have a ready-made solution. These are alternatives, and one needs to consider that, and it may be that the alternatives in different societies will be suitable at different times. Some societies which have accepted much more, and the third may be better suited for an integrated single toilets compared to countries where there is no acceptance of the third. For us, in historical terms and cultural terms, even the sexuality issue of the homosexuality issue has only since Navtej Sharma come to be decriminalized. We have been criminalizing it. So certainly we as a society are very backward in our thinking in terms of accepting the difference. In a number of other societies, I've been to some of the Eastern countries, Philippines, Thailand, etc. The people who are different and who are expressing their sexual expression is very categorically same-sex preference, etc. Or they are saying that we are different, they're queer. They are found everywhere. There's no ostracism. They would be there as shopkeepers. They will be there as salespersons. They are there in all fields. They're very visible and nobody questions them. They don't know why you are dressed up like that. But in India, if a man dresses up like a woman, it's a huge glaring scenario that everybody's looking at that person. How come this man is dressed up like that? Women dressing up like men, the questioning is not so much. There's a lot more acceptance of the women dressing up like men, because that is seen as a power statement. She's a powerful woman. But if a person a man is dressed up like in the woman's clothing, wears makeup, has long hair, has got now, ear studs are becoming more common among men for acceptance. But when men started wearing jewelry, it was a huge question. Today, it is also still not certain. Only studs in the ears are acceptable for men, not fancy earrings, long earrings which women wear. So certainly there is lesser acceptance, though it is beginning to happen. But it can begin to happen only once we accept the difference. That merely because you're a woman, you are not inferior. Just because you are a man, you are not superior. Just because you're the third, you are not the third, actually. So it will come with time only. And when you look at, when you read Arvind Narayan, when you look at Born Free and Equal, you hear about their stories, their experiences of life, which is horrifying. And this is horrifying despite being men. But because they're not acting like men, they're seen like acting as feminine or weird. They're not, just because they're biological men, they're not being accepted. Ankit, you had your hand up.
Ma'am, I had a question relating to the Arun Kumar judgment. In the beginning, the judgment says that the judge says that it is nothing new or path breaking that we are doing in this judgment. It is only that is there that we are reiterating. And the trans woman Srija, she identifies herself as a woman and marrying a man. So is it that this is just another example of a man marrying a woman who, although is a trans woman, but has chosen to identify herself as a woman? So the question is, does this judgment legalizes trans marriages or same-sex marriages, or is it just the same that this is only uh,
When
heterosexual marriage?
When Srija in the judgment has been described as a trans woman, we do not know what actually the judges are referring to. Are they referring to an intersex person who decided that she was a woman? That can be one scenario. The second, because when I say trans woman is a very, very vague term at one level. The other one can be like our student in LLB, now she's in third year. Biologically, she is a complete male. She's still not started SRS. She's not even started her medication for the purpose. But she says that I'm a trans woman. So in that sense, technically, when you compare the two physical bodies, these are same sex. But because she is a trans person, the Supreme Court has given her a choice to choose what she is. So in that case, it will amount to a same-sex marriage. But if she is a transsexual person, in the sense that she was born male and she underwent surgery, etc., and then became a female, then it is a heterosexual marriage. So there are three scenarios possible, and we do not know what exactly is the scenario in this case, biologically speaking. But because the Supreme Court has given this choice, so when in the legal terminology, the biological category has to be segregated from the legal category. So biologically, trans woman can be a male, but legally, because NALSA judgment does give her a choice to say I'm a woman, so legally she's a woman. And then it is a marriage between a man and a woman. For me, the problem was the first impression from me, first impression that, okay, very, very good beginning forward. Then I felt that, okay, this judgment is now forcing the trans persons to choose to be a man or a woman. If they choose to be a man and a woman, then they can marry. But this judgment does not help at all a trans person who chooses to be a trans. Because this reasoning is applying to a scenario where the person chose to be a woman. But if she chose to be a third, whether she would still be permitted. This judgment doesn't help us that. So therefore, my second impression of the case was that now this kind of reasoning will lead to, again, fitting the third into the binary of the two, of the male and the female. If they do not fall in the binary of two, then we've got no choice. My third impression of the judgment was then that actually this is opening the possibility of arguing that the law doesn't say anything about, the dictionary meaning maybe bride is the woman who on the date of her marriage is the dictionary meaning. But when you look at the present trend, when in the countries where same-sex marriages have been legalized, they give a choice to the partners to decide, to declare themselves whether they want to be married as bride and a groom, bride and a bride, or groom and a groom. So this has been left completely to them, that how they want to describe themselves. They are permitting union of the two. When you look at the Indian judgments on marriage, go back to what was the judgment on Section 9, restriction of conjugal rights cases? Saroj Rani, I forget now what is the name of the case. Do you remember? Where the judge first, I think Delhi High Court, had said that it is unconstitutional. And then Harvinder Kaur, or
Ma'am, is it Sarla Devi?
no, Sarla is not the name. And then we have the Supreme Court judgment which said that no, Section 9 is not unconstitutional. And the famous statement that allowing a law to enter the private sphere will be allowing a bull in the china shop. That comes from, I think it's Harvinder Kaur or something like that is the name of the case. So in that, the judge said, sex is not summum bonum. It is not the crux of the marriage. There is a lot more to marriage than just sex, and nobody can force sex in a marriage. That's what the judges said in the civil case. Even though we know that in criminal law, wife raped has got no remedy in law above the age of 18 now. So we were finding contrasting positions in the law. So if sex is not summum bonum and sex also happens, then companionship, dependency, love and affection, these are all part of marriage. Then what are our objections to having same-sex marriages? So in that sense, that this case does make an opening to lead to those arguments. And this case is not required to make a general statement about the situation, that if it is the trans person. So the different things. One is the trans person category. The other is the same-sex marriage. These are two different things. Because when we say trans marriages, these are saying biologically you are feeling one, but psychologically you feel somebody else. But same-sex marriage says, I am a man, I want to marry as a man. And he's a man, he's also. So none of them is a trans person. So trans and same-sex are not the same things. These are two different things. And sometimes we collapse the two. So in this case, if we were to look at exactly this one, so this certainly is not a case of a same-sex marriage in the sense we understand same-sex marriage. We're saying that people do not have any dysphoria between their sense of self and their biological bodies. So lesbianism and gay relationship, which is kind of saying the homosexual relationship, that is only limited to sexual preference, that who will be my sexual partner. That has got nothing to do with my feeling of who I am. So a trans person can be homosexual or heterosexual also. So if you read Lakshmi's biography, Me Lakshmi, Me Hijra, is a small book, is an interesting one. So she went through phases to understand who she is. So first she thought when she got puberty, she was attracted to men. And she thought that I'm a homosexual person. But the homosexual person said that, no, you're not homosexual. Even though she was a man, attracted to a man, he says, no, but you're not a homosexual because you think you're a woman. So your sexuality is actually heterosexual, which seems very strange that, biologically she's a male and she's saying that I identify, I like men and therefore I should be treated as gay. But the gay told her that, no, you're not gay. You are a trans person who is heterosexual. It may also be that suppose she was a man She wanted, she thought, no, biologically she was a man. She she felt that she was a woman, and then she was attracted sexually to women. Then she would think she is heterosexual, but actually then she is homosexual. Are you getting, Ankit? It's a complicated category, but we need to segregate the sexual preferences to identity. Identity is a different category, and sexual identity is the sexual identity, sexual preference, sexual attraction. These are the sexual attraction and sexual preference are the same thing. That when who do you fantasize to have sex with, whether you have it or not, is a functional category. But in your mental thoughts, are you attracted to the same-sex persons for sexual purposes, or opposite sex determines whether you are heterosexual or you are homosexual? Or if you're attracted to both categories, all the categories, then you are bisexual. So sexuality is separate from who I am. Am I a man or am I a woman, or am I neither man nor woman? So in that category, that person may have sexual preferences of the same sex that person believes I am, or it may be different as well. So coming back to the Arun Kumar is certainly cannot by any reasoning be said to be a case of same-sex marriage. But within the trans woman category, it may be that it turns out to be same-sex, that biologically both of them were men. But the judgment doesn't tell us that why, under which category of trans woman Srija falls. So all the three are possible, as I mentioned. She could be an intersex person, she could have been an SRS transsexual person, or she could have been a man thinking that she is a woman. And all the three categories are permitted to choose their sex. She has chosen to be a woman. So it is by that reasoning that it is a. So what the law has permitted is, in fact, that's what the judge starts in there. I'm doing nothing else. I'm just recognizing a reality. So the law, as far as he is concerned, says law permits marriage between man and a woman. The only clarification he has added is that who is a woman. So far, we've been saying that somebody who has been biologically born as a woman is a woman. He is expanding that category. So he's not saying I'm permitting same-sex marriages. He's not even saying that Hindu marriage says any two persons can, even when the law says any two Hindus can marry, he's not even going there. He's only saying that there is no controversy that Hindu Marriage Act does permit a marriage between man and woman. And the whole question is whether this marriage is between a man and a woman. And he said, this is a marriage between man and a woman. And then he gave an explanation that why trans women should be recognized as the real woman. That's the whole reasoning about in Arun Kumar. So who read Kamala Bhasin?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Who is this? Rajat, yes.
Yes. Ma'am, how does appearance play a role in constructing social markers, if any?
Say that again. How does
appearance plays a pivotal role in creating social markers, if any?
You tell me, when you see initially when women started dressing up like men with their short hair and wearing trousers and shirts, whether they changed their, whether they were considered as men, they were still considered as women only, no?
Yes.
So it is, what is happening is that because men are seen as powerful people, and it is assumed that everybody wants to be powerful, therefore women aspiring to be like men, wearing, living like them as men, not living, dressing up like them, they were still acceptable category because they were, initially, of course, there was lots of, when we were kind of growing up in our college time, there was a lot of conversation about women wearing trousers and jeans and shirts. There was a lot of conversation. Most of us did not wear them. It was only the educated, English school educated girls who were wearing those clothes, and they were still subject to a lot of at least pinpointing, if not ridicule. Today, it's not a question at all anymore. I think 100% of my women students wear trousers and jeans. Almost 100%, if not, no, maybe 99.9% wear jeans and trousers. And nobody looks at them twice. But today, the woman wearing shorts or cut sleeves, no, not cut sleeve, but low neck, well, they are still in the questionable category. In this whole period, how many men have progressed in change of their appearances? So one thing I've noticed is, one is they started wearing, some men, some of them have got ponytails, or maybe a little long hair as well, but most of the time they are done with a jura, so that is seen as the new metro men, and
that's a sign of
also
masculinity.
have, no, that's not masculinity, that's the metro men,
Okay,
that's the hep category. And then at Bost, instead of the dupattas, they have got stoles. These are the only changes which have happened. But these are seen very typically male characteristics. These are not seen as female thing that they have adapted. They have adapted the female jewelry, female clothing as a masculine category. And the shawl is, no, the stole is also special occasions. It's not a day-to-day wear. So somewhere when they are picking up some items of women appearance category accessories, they are masculinizing it that, no, this is the male category. So they're not saying, no, I will wear the necklace like women do. They will not do the things which women have. Sometimes, you know, now the men have also started having clean chest. So they will get all the hair removed. So they're picking up on them. They're becoming effeminate, but that is all part of the metro men. The metro men which wants to, you know, say that I am caring, I treat women equally. In their thinking, they may not, but in their appearance, they want to present that. But that are not seen as feminine qualities. When you look at fashion industry, so previously all the fairness creams were for women. Then we got Shah Rukh Khan come and say that, no, men's skin is different and they require a different fairness cream. So fairness among men was never a quality which has now been created as a quality by commercialization of the whole process. So many times values are created through the fashion industry also. Then we got this whole campaign saying that, no, now you are discriminating people on the basis of color. Once we know Black Life Matters. Then this whole controversy came, and now no more fairness creams are available. Now it is only glowing cream, glowing skin, and all those things.
Lovely.
Glow and lovely, fair, lovely, gone. So suddenly lots of things happen because of the commercial activities. Now, commerce, the businessman is not concerned with values. They are concerned with selling their products. And we very quickly take those advertisements as the norms for our life. So women will spend, they undergo so much of physical pain to be seen as beautiful. I do not know how many of the men have got their brows done. So it's a very painful process to go through waxing. It's a very painful process. But a lot of women go through it because industry has created a man of a picture of a desirable woman. So women bite into it, men bite into it. Similarly, now men are biting into all the commercialization of the beautification products. They should also have the hair shiny and silky, and they should have all the things which women were having. So women would have pink razors, the men will have blue or black razors. The color has become, I think this Sunday's newspaper carried all this big coverage that see how people are promoting non-binary. So Anushka and Virat Kohli has announced the birth of their child in yellow color. They have not chosen pink and blue. And history of pink and blue, actually earlier, pink was seen to be the male color and blue was seen as the female color. And it is at some stage in our history of colors, and this is all there on the Google, you do the search and you'll find all that history. So it's changed. So a lot of the indicators of masculinity and femininity have undergone change because of the commercialization of the product, nothing more than that. So we have to be aware of that what are the forces which are creating this binary. Coming back to our discussion on the breaking away from the binary. So first was the creation of the binary, and binary also in a hierarchical sense. Now we are breaking the binary to be inclusive of the third. Nalsa judgment is a very big first attempt towards making them inclusive. But when you examine them, the steps, the recommendations one by one, you do find that they have also fallen the trap. And you do not blame, because this is an evolving process. This is the first step they have taken. Therefore, a slip here and there is acceptable. What is most glaring in that judgment is, of course, that they have not at all referred to the sexuality of the person or sexual preference of the person. So till the time Navtej Johar came, though they were recognized as human beings, but they could still be criminalized for doing anything which is sexual in nature, because that would have all and that's also not very clear whether the activities between a trans person and other sexual activity will be even covered under 377. Do you know what 377 provided? Before Navtej Sharma came. Navtej Singh Johar, not Navtej Sharma, Navtej Singh Johar. Before that judgment, what was 377? It's still the same in the printed versions of the section. What was criminalized under 377?
Basically, it termed unnatural offenses as any sexual relationship, any sexual intercourse between people of the same sex. It also penalized bestiality, that is, human beings having sex
We
with.
need to no. We need to look at the language.
Sexual intercourse, carnal intercourse, which is against the order of the nature. Like they're not
No,
saying between
that's not
homosexual.
enough. That's not enough. That's not enough. Let me read this for you. It read, whoever voluntary has carnal intercourse, or whoever. No, remember the discussion on the word of whoever. What does whoever means? What would whoever include?
Ma'am, each and every person.
Which means
Indulge-
man, woman, and other. Okay.
Yeah.
So the offender can be anyone. When will that person be an offender? When that person has voluntarily has carnal intercourse, and they're not use the word sexual intercourse. Sexual intercourse traditionally was understood as penovaginal intercourse. Everything else was seen as carnal. And Arvind Narayan actually tells us that how in the different codes, the word carnal intercourse has been referred to different things. So there's no one understanding of what constituted carnal intercourse. But the term, in any case, is not sexual penovaginal. Against the order of nature with. So this is important. With any man, woman, or animal. So if a third had sex with third, not included, no? If a man had intercourse with woman, that's still included. But if it is carnal intercourse, then it is saying it's not penovaginal. So anal sex with a woman and by a man with a woman was also within the category. So it was not only limited to homosexual intercourses. It included, so bestiality is a separate category. Among human beings, what they have incorporated was that the victim can be either a man or a woman among the human beings category. Because this IPC very categorically defines who is a man, who is a woman. The biological female of any age, biological male of any age. That is what the meaning of man, woman is. So if a man forged anal intercourse with an intersex person, was not punishable under this category. Because the category was not saying whoever has intercourse with any other human being. Then it would have been carnal intercourse with anybody else. Then it would have protected the third category also. But 377 did not. And it did not protect even consensual category. So it does not say, because when you compare this illicit carnal intercourse with sexual intercourse, there it was categorically without consent, without will, and other categories follow. Here, there was no such category. It merely says, if you had it, that's it, you will be held liable, whether consensual or non-consensual. So even if there were two men consensually having carnal intercourse, they would have been liable. And they had been, and what has been the scenario, and that's what Arvind Narayan does emphasize on, that the fact that, so somewhere what we, by making consensual homosexual activity, even though it was not limited to only homosexual activity, by making that, we said that sexual activity, the legitimate sexual activity, is permissible only among consenting heterosexual adults. Because it was consenting heterosexual adults, even if they were not married, there was no offense. The offense was only when heterosexual adults had the man, not the woman. So that biologically it is not possible for a woman to rape a man. And on that analogy, it was said that the biological man, if he has sexual intercourse with a woman without her consent against her will, that he will be punishable. But if it was consensual, certainly there was no punishment unless the woman was a married woman. The married woman was there, then it was still not an offense of rape, it was the offense of adultery. So at par, in contrast to that, when it came to the consensual sex among two adults of the same sex, 377 punished that. There was also a controversy that whether it was sexual intercourse or it was carnal intercourse, what was the organ involved was always the penis. It was assumed. So whether two women having sex with each other, whether they could be held liable at 377 had always been a contentious category, and we have not seen cases of prosecution of women, the lesbian women. Because there can be no intercourse among two women. They may please each other, but there is no intercourse between them. So it was primarily the homosexual men which were the target of this. But when you look at the actual case law, you do not come across cases of consensual category. They are not usually, very exceptionally, there might be a case where a consenting homosexual man was prosecuted. Most of the time, it was the case of sodomy, and which was understandable. That should be punishable in any case. But the problem with the homosexual men were that they were subjected to a lot of harassment, exploitation, and violence because they were consenting homosexual men. The policemen would want favors from them. They will be threatened with blackmail, your parents, your family, because the ostracism of homosexuality was so much that the men will be suffering too much. Lots of our films have focused on that aspect. So when you look at the section, one understanding that it was not limited to only man-to-man sex or woman-to-woman. Woman-to-woman was seen as excluded. Man-to-woman was also included if it was not penovaginal. So this whole aspect of 377, the scenario which is covered in 377, have been left outside the purview of NALSA. NALSA only talks about in the directions. It is the operative part is primarily limited to reservations as a weaker section. So that's the only thing which is recognized, but certainly that's still a very, very major step forward. But to construct a human being, so if they're equal human beings, and we consider that sexuality is part of adulthood, sexual interactions is part of adulthood, especially consensual categories we're talking about, then how can you construct a human being as an equal without granting them the sexual freedom, without touching on that aspect. So even though 377 directly did not apply to trans, it applied to homosexual people. With homosexuals and trans are different categories of people. So if it did not apply, there was no reason actually for the Supreme Court to say we will not look into that question. But 377, on the face of it, even though technically the word whoever will include the trans persons among the offenders, but the other words do not include them as the victims. And therefore, if there were two transgender persons who were having sex with each other, that is certainly out of the purview of 377. And therefore, some sexuality could have been recognized. But the judges, by making that one statement, they have kept it away, and therefore constructing the trans people as asexual persons. That's a huge deficiency, not recognizing a real problem they face. And what actually nowadays with the Badhai, etc., becoming very minimal, one, people have stopped getting married in metropolitan towns. Very many people are not getting married, even the majority still does. But most of the people, educated class especially, do not produce more than 2 children. So earlier they were able to gather their sufficient money to live on by going to every household 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. But today it has reduced to 2. And therefore the amount of money they're also asking is much bigger than they used to. But even then they cannot make their 2 ends meet in the absence of any employment opportunities. Employments are also for men and women. When it says that whoever may apply, most of the time the columns say who you are, and you have to take man and a woman. So that has been the aspect which has been to some extent limited. So most of the time, the transgender persons do sex work in order to survive. So all that sex work has been treated as an illegal category. So neither we are recognizing among them consensual categories of sex, nor the victimized categories of sex, and certainly not the offender categories of sex. So, and when we say trans person, again, there might be completely biological men who are having sex with other women, not an offense at all. But there was a very, very complicated area, but the judges decided not to look into that aspect at all. So certainly good beginning, but a lot more needs to be done. So who said you have read Born Equal and Free?
Ma'am, I did.
Okay, Medha. Do you want to highlight?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please, Medha.
Ma'am, this article is about a debate which took place in the Human Rights Council in Geneva, and they discussed the rights of the LGBT people, and they focused on the political attention on the discriminatory laws and practices at the national level, and the obligations of the states to uphold their rights. So they said that all people, irrespective of the sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity, they are entitled to the protection provided by the international human rights. And till then, the most we understood was just irrespective of sex. So they included sexual orientation and gender identity also with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they gave 5 recommendations or like obligations to the states to end the discrimination. And they are that, protecting individuals from homophobic and transphobic violence. So it's both inside the LGBT community, the violence taking place, and outside it, like the person of the same gender or person of a different gender or sexual orientation doing the violence.
Mm-hmm.
Then second is to prevent torture and cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment of LGBT persons, which happens in every facet of life. Third is decriminalizing homosexuality. Fourth is the prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And then the last one is we have to respect their freedom of expression, association, and peaceful assembly.
So what is our understanding about what are, which among these 5 steps we have made a beginning, and what needs to be done to achieve or at least walk towards these steps at different levels?
Ma'am, homosexuality we have decriminalized.
So 377 today applies in what scenarios? It's only limited to non-consensual homosexual activities, and it is still limited to, because animals cannot give consent, so any carnal intercourse with any animal is also prohibited. So that's the only category which has been, so 377 has not been abolished. Many people make that mistake of thinking that after Navtej Singh Johar, 377 is gone. It's not gone. It still exists. What has been decriminalized has been consensual sex among same-sex persons. That's the only category which has gone. And we do know, and we'll come to that in our subsequent classes, where we do look at sexuality aspects, that what has been the implication of 375 amendments and what from 377. So earlier we said that if a husband had anal intercourse with the wife, it fell within the 377 category. And it was even consensual anal sex between husband and wife, which was criminalized. And certainly if it was not consensual, she could complain. Now we have included anal sex, non-consensual anal sex, within 375. And therefore the question is that whether the wife now can complain, because sexual intercourse with wife is not criminalized after the age of 18. So we'll raise those questions later on. Returning to the other steps. What are the other steps? Decrease homophobia. Tell me in this class, how many of you, I will not ask you to identify the person, if you do know, how many of you actually know a person who is either a trans person or a hijra or is a homosexual? We got one hand. 2, 3. So when we look, when we know them personally, 4. I'm very surprised that Deepak also has raised his hand. When you look at those friends of ours, or no, when you know them, do you know them at a close quarters, or do you know them at, that, okay, you know that such and such person in my neighborhood lives? I did ask my niece, she's in a village in UP, and I did ask her that whether there are any trans persons or any hijra kind of persons in her village. So she said, yeah, they're there. And I was quite surprised at her answer. She said, okay, so how do people deal with them? She says, no, they go to the boys' school and they are treated like boys only. So the conversations about those people, and they had not been ousted. So that's a very heartening thing, that in her village, I cannot speak for all the villages in the country, that there are these people who are doubted to be different, but they have not been ousted from their families. They're still there. And I do know some other stories about people, that there was a man in Jammu who had been married and then got divorced because he did not think he was a man. And then he actually started living as a woman. But within a year or 2, he committed suicide because the social ostracism was so much. So the people we do know, you must have heard stories, if you know them at a personal level. I did hear these stories from 2 of our students in our last batch when they came to our class and told us their stories, how much sexual abuse they undergo. Both of them are men, biologically speaking. How many times they've been raped by men. And certainly the exclusion both by the male community and the female community, is killing, because neither men accept them as part of their clan, nor women accept them as a part of their clan. So one of these students declared publicly that I'm a trans woman. The other student said, I do not know myself as yet. And he's a very, very, he dances in a very, very feminine way. And that has made him subject of ridicule. When we started this class, in the initial classes, we did put up a chart saying, how many of the traits do you think are male, female, T, and all traits? And we know that each one is capable of having all of those traits, but in actual practice, so the people who know have raised their hands saying that they know people who are trans, whether they can identify any specific quality which is their quality and you do not find them in the other people you know in your lives, as men and women. Whether the people you know, the trans people you know, whether they have shared any stories of their exploitation and violence against them with you.
Yeah, I'll definitely say that it's the appearance which is very, different. Because I know a person who appears in a very, a way that he and she, or let's say Zayed, can be easily identified as someone who is not from the this binary gender. So that is one of the most striking things. And that's it.
Yeah, so you've just only seen that person, but you do not know that person, or do you know that person?
I do know that person.
So in terms of qualities, do you think they have got some qualities which are different than the other friends of yours who are male and female?
I don't think there is any other different quality from other people. It's only the appearance which is different. Other than that, it's all the same.
Therefore, it is very important to realize that actually they're no different. So just because somebody dresses up different, that doesn't make them different. It's only different in dressing. And before I'd been exposed to lots of people around the world, we always had this, that the Western people think this way, they live this way, because their appearances are very different than ours. And in my introductions, 1 year in England, 1 year in Russia, and 4 months in US, I've found that the human qualities are the same. It is just the outer appearances, the manner in which they greet you, the language they speak are different, the color is different. But when it comes to the feeling of love and affection, the connectedness with the other, it is still the same. And I was so taken aback at actually one day I was sitting in Harvard and just watching the students pass by. For a fraction of a second, I just forgot that I'm sitting in the US campus. I felt I was sitting in a Delhi University campus because the body language of the students was the same like here. So even they were not, they were all fair, they were white, and some of had different hair color, and they were certainly dressed up differently. But when it came to the manner in which they were interacting with each other, the manner in which they were walking, the carefree and the backpacks, it was so striking to me that we make all this distinction, but actually human beings are the same around the world. But unless we get exposed to them, in fact, when we went first time to the US, we were 5 colleagues from Asia. And when we met people who have been married for 20 years, 40 years, 45 years, so my colleague said, oh, you also married for such a long time. And for them, it was a surprise because we hear only of divorces. And when I went to the Harvard campus, there were these people with mohawk hairstyles and all those colorful things. So they were all there at the Harvard Square, but not in the university campus. But what we get exposed to is this picture from the Harvard Square, which is a place for people who are have got all these funky ideas about their lives. So that is specifically meant for them, and they are all included within the cultural milieu in that area. But we think that all Americans look like that, all Americans behave like that. And therefore, this misconception about the other, because we do not know the other. We have not met the other. The moment you meet the other, And for me, this happened in my juvenile justice work as well. We always had these children on the streets. What we think of these children on the streets? We think, oh no, some of the children who are on the streets, वो ये तो उठाई गिरे भी हैं, अभी तो अच्छे से बात कर रहे हैं, हम अगर नजर बचेगी हमारा बैग लेके भाग जाएंगे. We think of them as thieves, as mischievous, as lazy. We think of everything else. And when I got exposed to them, the moment I could relate to them, I could feel, oh, he's as mischievous as my nephew. So suddenly this otherness went away when I got to know of them. We think, oh, they're so dirty, इनको खुजली हो रही है, ये लोग ऐसे हैं. No, we have got all these negative categories. When you look at beggars, because we have heard of some stories कि उसकी beggar की सीट के नीचे से 2 लाख रुपया 20 लाख रुपया निकला. So we think, देखो ये तो सिर्फ पैसा जमा करते हैं. They're all lazy people and they find begging is a better occupation. So I asked myself, if it's such a good occupation, why don't we start begging instead of wanting to become lawyers? We should all take the lazy possession. So the loss of dignity is not which strikes us. And also this beggar does, when we interact with children, they had 2 sets of clothes. One, and they would wear both of them on their person because they do not have a place to keep the other set. Street children, if they are only street children, they do not have a home to go back to. Whatever possession they have to carry on their persons. If they were to, and so their life stories, when you hear their life stories, you understand how are they living. And I think I've shared this already with you, that when I came across my first gay students in US, and he has brought in an adopted son. So for me, it was a question at that point of time in my mind that why, that these people, why are they adopted a son when they don't like the families? And then I had to re-educate myself that it is not that they do not like families. It's just that they have a sexual preference of men compared to women. That's the only difference. Otherwise, they have sisters, they have got women friends, they've got mothers, and they are very connected with the families. But in their own family, they want a male partner, but they are not averse to having a daughter or a son for that matter. So they do want to have a family. And that is where this whole conversation has to go back to. That once we recognize, and Nalsa judgment does refer about it. So we have these 2 contrasts. One is the aspiration, it says born and free, is telling us where we should be moving. Arvind Narayan, and the contrast is how much exploitation and abuse happens to people who are in the trans category. The paper is more limited to the homosexual category rather than the trans persons as such. But the narration of the incidents and the judicial interpretation of the incidents. So rubbing a penis in thighs, is it carnal intercourse? And we have seen in that writing that some judgments do say that it is. So how the definition of carnal intercourse has changed, and everything, different sets of people had decided differently. But the whole thing was that what is against the order of nature? Whether the people who are born intersex, are they against the order of nature, the very biological category? Or they're also, they are born in the same process. The process of birth, conception of birth of intersex person is no different. Same goes for other categories of intersex persons, the trans persons also. The one who is born biologically male and think that he's a female, or the vice versa. They were conceived and born by the same process by which any other man and woman are born and brought up. So is that normal? Is their birth natural, or it is also against the order of nature? This whole category of what is against the order of nature, the questioning comes from both these readings. So in your understanding, what steps can be taken to include them within the mainstream, the trans, LGBT, QHI plus, all the variations among the sexes and genders? How do you make them inclusive?
I think, ma'am,
Saloni and then Medha.
Ma'am, I think acceptance. One of my relative has a boy who likes to like dress up like a woman or like girl, nail paints, wearing nail paints and jewelries. So they used to beat him. Like he was subject to like a lot of physical beating, abusing. Like their neighborhoods used to like use the slangs like "moga hai," "hijra," and something like that. So in 2010, he committed suicide, and their family was like, they were also kind of some kind of carelessness, like we don't accept such kind of activity. We are very against and like uh, like show off कि हाँ हम tolerate नहीं करते इन सारे activities को. And even today, like she is not very sad about it कि okay like वो suicide कर ले. She is like कि पैदा ही नहीं होना चाहिए था.
Relief हो गया.
Yeah, so acceptance सबसे पहले family से and then from society.
हाँ, मगर कैसे आएगी acceptance?
Ma'am,
जी, मेरा.
I feel the general public should be sensitized by, and one of the very important processes is like what Saloni said, narrating the actual incidences of people. Like the people themselves can do it, or some other way they can write anonymously. Because when we listen to real stories, we feel bad that as a society we let those people down and they had no recourse in the entire society. So I think their stories should come forward.
Each one of the person you meet who is trans and hear them, what is common among them is rape, and second is wanting to commit suicide constantly. Each one of them will say that at some point of time, and Lakshmi also write, and you read any one of their stories or hear or come across them, each one of them has felt so ousted that they, and I don't know whether I've related to the story of Robert Wintermuth. He's a professor in King's College, and I attended his wedding to another man. And at the wedding, they were speaking about themselves. A lot of people spoke, and both the grooms also spoke. The other groom did not speak much because he did not know much English, but Robert spoke. And the moment he started speaking, he just cried all his pain of these many years. He was 50 years old at that age. And all his pain of these many decades came out. Because this was the first time he was actually able to share what all has he undergone in his 50 years of existence. From puberty, he realized that he was different. And I'm talking about, this is 2008. So 2008, he was 50, which means he was born somewhere in 1960s. So in 1960s, the conversation about homosexuality wasn't there. And he thought he was different. He was attracted to boys. And he couldn't tell it to anybody. So he just thought that there was a devil in me because of which I am feeling in this manner. He just could not express himself. He could not express his sexuality or preference. He could not talk about it to anybody. And he thought that it is something wrong with me. So he underwent that phase. And then at some stage, he met another person and realized that, no, this is innate. This is nothing wrong with me. This is how nature has made me. But still to talk about it. And he kind of cried more because his mother, who was 83 years old, was present at that wedding. They said, I had never imagined in my life that if ever an occasion came when I will get married, my mother would attend it. The boy's family did not come, none of them. And his three friends came from Malaysia. They attended in the traditional attires and all. But the groom's family wasn't there to one groom. They were both declared themselves as grooms. So one groom, the Malaysian groom's family did not attend. But Robert's mother, who was the only alive member, she came. And of course, there were lots of other people from about 20 countries who attended that wedding as a symbolic thing. And his whole point was that he wanted to make it a big affair so that youngsters can get courage, that they can come out and speak about it. There were people from Pakistan, and they have much more difficulty because of the religion taboo on homosexual relationship. I want to be a Muslim and still a homosexual. How do you reconcile the two identities? So there are people who are wanting to share their stories, but are there people ready to listen? If they do not, and that's where, because we do find all these hijras on the red lights, but we will only pity them, we will hate them, we will oust them, but we will never understand the pain and suffering they go through because they think they are the oppressor. Actually, they harass us. That's how we construct. So anybody who is different, a lot of families, the same way Saloni said, they would want, उसका झाड़ फूक कराएंगे, उसका ओझा बुला देंगे, उसको मार पिटाई करेंगे. Until I think 1960s, it was considered to be a mental disease. It was only 1960s and 70s that it was declared that it's not a psychological problem. So somewhere even among the educated people, there's no conversation. In this course, we have for the last 5-6 years, we've started including the third. Previously, the gender justice course was limited to discrimination against women. And at the time in 1996, when we introduced the course, we had thought futuristically that at some stage, if we would want to include the third, we should be able to do that. If we said family jurisprudence or we said women in law, then we would not have been able to get that. But it has taken us many years before we could include it in a place like Delhi University. And this year we have many students, but look at the number of students who are actually attending. I've got 72 students in my class and about 25 students who are supposed to be from outside the class. And look at the number of the attendance we have in this course. So these are the people who are open to the idea of discussion and learning. Rest of them I do not know. Deepak said that he has got lots of issues with the internet. But is that the problem for the whole class? First year is also in different parts of the country, and they are about 95% attendance every day. So how is it that first year students are able to manage their network issue? Network issue is the only thing, but this class is not. Somewhere the interest, and I'm happy that in this class we have a substantial number of men as well, and which has been the tradition in Delhi University. But this is, even if it's suppose 125, but we have about 2,000 students in 1 year. So out of 2,000, it is about 125 which are ready to even think about this subject. How do you then create awareness, sensitization? Medha, when you said we need to create that, that's where the substantive questions are, that what kind of steps. One is, administrative sensitization, these are voluntary activities. Whether there are any other measures which will be useful in integrating.
Yeah, we're still not talking about the sexuality content of all these things, because in the end it all boils down to sexuality. I mean, that's how the society sees. So I think it's a very important thing to have a discourse on sexuality and how the culture or some religions, or maybe all the religions, regress, are opposed to it. If not earlier, then now.
No, that's true. No, sexuality conversation is one, because sex is a taboo topic. And I have shared our experiences in even teaching the offense of rape. Your whole experiences in the previous year, when section 375, 373 talked about, in how many have frank discussion on the problem that we have. We had colleagues who had difficulties even speaking terminology which is referring to the male body parts and female body parts. So in that kind of cultural scenario, when we are not even talking about forced sex and the offense of rape, to talk sexuality is a far cry. The second one is that when you start talking about it, the inhibitions have to go. But sexuality is only one part of the conversation, Rajat, in my understanding. Important part, but only one part. What about their economic rights? What about their rights within the family? Because that's where the whole thing starts. Within the family, what are their rights? So we have the IPC which says no child can be abandoned. No, if any child is abandoned till the age of 12, then there can be penal consequences for the parents. So abandonment is one thing, and then giving up your child. So giving up your child was the hijras. At one point of time during the British period, when we had the Criminal Tribes Act, it was assumed that they were kidnapping children. But we do know that cases like the Saloni said, they didn't oust him, but they did not protect him also. They were ostracizing himself. They were subjecting their own child to a lot of violence. Then violence coming from neighborhood and other societies is certainly going to be there. So do we need law and policy to secure rights of these children in their families? So we need to look for that in our legislation. And I forget now which, when are we scheduled to look at that law? Can you check your synopsis? I should have it here. We are going to look at we haven't listed the date for it. We should do it now then next class. Oh, wait, 16 February. So Deepak, are you here? I've got a date for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Deepak, on the 16th, we are going to look at the Transgender Persons Act 2019.
Okay, ma'am.
15th, we are going to look at Navtesh Singh Johar case.
Yes, ma'am.
So now I hope that you will read something on this.
Yes,
You can
ma'am.
have a look at the website of what are they called? The legislative. It's in our
PRS, madam. PRS legislative.
yeah, PRS. Thank you. So PRS website. Look at that and see. They have a summary of the legislation. Find out if there are any critique available. So everybody is not only limited to Deepak. Everybody needs to look at. And Deepak, please have a look at the dashboard. Don't get angry unnecessarily.
No, ma'am. I wasn't getting angry, madam. Sorry.
चलो कोई बात नहीं. Because I felt that you were getting angry and I was getting angrier with you. So let's not get there. Look up the dashboard. On the dashboard, we have given you date-wise reading list. So read as much as you can for the classes. And I'm saying this to everybody, not only to Deepak. Because spending time on what is already written is not very useful. If we can make connections with that, from that reading to our life. Deepak, you also raise your hand that you know somebody who is trans, who's different. Was that by mistake?
No, ma'am. I know a few of them.
If you know some of them, can you tell us how do you find them as human beings, as people you know? What has been their experiences in life? You want to speak about it?
Yes, ma'am. I want to say something about it.
Please.
मैम दो हिस्सों में मैं इसको कैटेगराइज करूंगा मैम, इस बात को मैम. एक तो जब हम हॉस्टल में रहते थे तब मैंने उस बंदे को देखा मैडम, ठीक है मैडम, और हमको पता चला कि वो बंदा ऐसा है. वी वर इन 10th class 11th class, so we did not know about all these things that time, and he was we were in hostel, so he was sexually abused by some of my classmates. And after like 10 to 15 years after that, I came to know that now he is he became a Baba, ma'am. Are you getting me? Means, a religious person, a religious figure. Now he's running his mutt, a kind of mutt. He is running his mutt. Although he got married as well, but now he left his wife and now he is running a mutt. So he was abused. He was like a victim that time, but how he grew with all those things, all those difficulty, and he now I'm saying he because we knew that person as a male person.
तो बाबा भी ही होते हैं, बाबा भी ही होते हैं.
ही होते मैडम, but he was gay, so
हाँ तो गे होने पे गे तो ही थोड़ी होना रुक जाता है. ये तो फिर भी गे में देखो भाई, मैं डिस्टिंक्शन कर रही थी कि जो गे पर्सन है वो ही है. उसको कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, शी नहीं कहलाना चाहते अपने आप।
हाँ मैं समझ गया मैम। तो
है तो जो ट्रांस है उसमें हो सकता है कि बायोलॉजिकली वो ही है मगर वो प्रेफर करते हैं शी। सो गे
Okay,
पर्सन तो ही रहते हैं।
हाँ वो अभी बाबा बन गए हैं मैम। So he was victim that time, but he developed himself. उसने अपने thinking को grow किया इस perspective में, उसने अपने आप को suppress नहीं किया, and he accepted this thing, and now he is a successful बाबा मैम।
हाँ मगर हमारे कल्चर में सोचते हैं कि बाबाज आर ऑल asexual persons. We do not believe babas will be having sex with men or women for that matter. So in that sense, he has actually not found acceptance of his sexuality. उसने मैरिज के बहुत से करते हैं, बहुत all no. So let's no. One is that let me re-emphasize this: that the issues of gay and lesbians are different than the issues of trans persons. Gay and lesbian persons are not deprived of their property rights. They are not thrown out of the of the right they have in the family. The limitation is that they're not permitted legally to marry another person of the same sex. And now with the decriminalization, he will not be penalized also. Previously, he would be penalized. He could be. Will be or not is a separate question, but he could be. So even today, even though homosexuality has been decriminalized, social acceptance is not there. So a lot of people who are not attracted to women and women who are not attracted to men, they are forced to get into a heterosexual marriage. And it makes life hell for them. They do not like that marriage. And we have known people who have married, had 3 children, and then they divorced and then declared their preference for the gay relationship. So this whole, and this is said, no, Baba Ramdev to कहते मेरे पास भेजो मैं उनको ठीक कर दूंगा सारे gay लोगों को. So he also makes that claim. Though, of course, people say that some of the gay and lesbian have chosen their sexual preference because they were a very abusive heterosexual relationship. The other are that who, since their puberty time, they realize that they are not attracted to the opposite sex, they are attracted to the same sex. The aspect of the gay person being able to express, the space is not there. So the families will either torture them to extent that they will come, or even if the family is accepting, the neighborhood and the society will force them to. They do end up doing it, lot of things which they would not want to. So one, the sexual exploitation, which Deepak has also said. The second, the instances of suicide among them is very high. The third one, another gay person I know is a gay activist. He is married to a very old, compared to his age, a much older foreigner lady. And because he was under a lot of pressure to marry, he said, okay, I am now in love with this woman and I will marry. They both live their independent lives. This woman was ready to marry this gay man, knowing that he's a gay, because they will have no sex and she's not interested in sex. She was interested in facilitation of her visits to India. She has a lot of spirituality. So she wants to visit ashrams and she wants to pursue her yoga and meditation and all that. And for that, marrying an Indian man would facilitate her visa issues. So the reasons for this heterosexual marriage are very different than what we believe the marriage is about. So it's a marriage of convenience. And they are both happy. The family has stopped because the neighbor were putting so much like, मैं लड़का शादी नहीं कर रहा, उसने कर ली अब शादी, फिर अंगे से कर ली तो अब हम क्या करें? So it know that the family is settled, everybody is settled. He is happily gay, and she is happily into spirituality, and the government doesn't ask any questions. So a lot of people find via media at individual level to thwart this pressure of the society. Why should the people be worried about what people do in their bedrooms? If I have a classmate who is gay, is he going to threaten me? If that is my concern, then it's a possibility. But that problem will be in heterosexual relationships also. There might be a girl or a boy who is threatened. We know girls who threaten the boys, मैं suicide कर दूंगी अगर तुमने शादी नहीं की थी. or the boys will say, I will commit suicide, or reverse, they will throw acid. There are all kinds of pressures there, even in heterosexual relationships. But what people, if I have a colleague who, what he or she does, whether they're married, not married, whether they're sexually active, not active, it's none of my business. It is not in the public realm. In fact, today only there is a news in the newspaper which talks about, I forget now, it's a police, so it's in some either police or it is the semi-military, the paramilitary, where the man was dismissed from service for obscenity. He was found to be publicly showing his affection to his male partner.
मैडम होम गार्ड था मैडम, आज ही
होम गार्ड, हाँ मुझे वही था, कुछ पैरामिलिट्री होम गार्ड आज के डेट में अखबार में है. So then the judges said that no, merely because he's showing affection in public does not automatically amount to obscenity. So if there is no obscenity, he cannot be, just because he has a same-sex preference cannot be made. So we are now beginning to get those individual incidents where we are beginning to recognize inclusiveness in those judgments. But a lot more has to happen. In how many of our families will go back and talk about this discussion in our friend circle, convince them? Because when it's a sensitization method, we are talking about sensitization at an official level. When Robert Wintemute came to India, he was at Nalsar. He was at Nalsar for a semester. And at that point of time, he decided to give a talk to the students on this subject. And the Vice Chancellor put his foot down. The students went on strike and ultimately the lecture was happened. But at a place like Nalsar, which is an elite institution, and this was a few years ago, I forget now, certainly the 2005, 2006 ke aaspaas ki baat hai. So then we brought him to Delhi University and he gave a lecture in the Law Center 1 as well. And we had a big banner. He said, can I take this banner with me? I never had such a big banner for my lecture. And we had a number of students who attended. We've had many lectures on the themes for a long time. We have been getting people to speak to us. So that is at the organized level can happen only if there is somebody in the helm of affairs who is not influential enough to be able to organize. So in Nalsar, even the students wanted, the senior professors wanted, the Vice Chancellor put his foot down at that point of time. And it had led to revolt at that point of time. Delhi University, we haven't faced that opposition from any group of people. It is very fortunate for us. And there's a lot more conversation. But I believe that the conversations have to go at individual levels. We have to reach out. Saloni, would you ever want to speak to the family that were not accepting that how wrong it was? And of course, you won't be able to convince. So you need not, and especially because they are the affected party, it's much more difficult to deal with them. But among other people, I think we need to open up conversations. And when Rajat said we need to have conversation on sexuality, male sexuality, female sexuality, the sexuality per se, I think we need to break taboos. And if we do not make a start at an individual level, it's certainly not going to percolate up. You may be fortunate enough to have somebody who's committed. And I kind of went through that phase when our faculty was not teaching the offense of rape. And I was aghast that at that time, when we had problem of wife burning and rape among the very big problems in mid-80s, Delhi University said, no, we're not going to teach. And it took us more than 10 years of conversations among faculty colleagues to reintroduce. We were the first one in LC1 to introduce that. And the faculty said, yes, we are all happy. The subject teachers decide the course. So all the subject teachers were in favor. Our professor in charge at that point of time put his foot down. This is what we are going to teach to the students. And this is a Supreme Court judgment. So either you're telling me that Supreme Court is writing pornography. And in fact, one of the judgments was really badly written. And we have taken it up, included in our course to say that, no, this is not the kind of language we should be using. So that was our reason. But our case material got delayed because that person put his foot down. Ultimately, we got through. Then I went to CLC. We had the same resistance from one of the teachers. And so certainly, even among the Delhi University faculty, we were having problem even talking about rape. Now, in conversation of the LGBT community, we are going a step forward. Not only their sexuality, but their personality itself. So certainly each one of us have a responsibility, I believe, to open up these conversations among our friend circles, among our families and friends. And unless you start making conversation, if a hijra comes in your neighborhood, make that as an occasion to talk about their problems and the issues that they're facing. Maybe have, beyond the interaction of badhai, etc., maybe that may be an occasion for them to give a small lecture on their lives. Most of them won't be ready. One of our colleagues got into trouble. She was in a restaurant and she found a group of hijras come to the restaurant asking for money from the owner. And she got into conversation with them because she's a very committed teacher about social justice, upliftment of people and all that. That's not the occasion for them to do that. So certainly we need to pick up the right occasions for doing the conversations, but I'm quite sure that we can find those occasions. So, okay, any more observations, conversations we have? We can, I will encourage all of you to look at these two readings once again, if you have not done that. Nobody said I've read Arvind Narayan. Please read it for tomorrow. I'll pick up maybe some videos on this theme and then talk about it. Yes, attendance.
Ma'am, I have a confusion.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, like in the initial classes, we discussed about the clothes. Like we make the clothes into the binary genders, and when we differentiate people based on just the clothes, it's like internalized in us. So, ma'am, these trans people who cross dress, so like why do they? Are they falling prey to that binary categorization of clothing? Like Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi, so she, like she wears a sari, wears makeup and everything.
No. She is very categorically saying, I am a woman. She's not saying I am neither woman nor man. She is saying, I am a woman.
Like, but other people, like, because the society which has discriminated against the trans people, that society has, that is a society that has established that gender clothing identity. Like we should, like we as women, we like give the argument that we should be allowed to wear everything, like the male type of clothes and the female type of clothes. So
no,
why
in
do
fact, today, Medha, we do not even recognize that trousers are male. For women who wear jeans, do you think they are wearing male clothing?
No, ma'am. I'm just saying the philosophy behind that, like in a traditional system, if I go, I have to wear a salwar suit, like somewhere. So, like, and this is the binary categorization of clothing.
Yeah, but when you look at different age, different periods, skirts in Scotland for men was common.
Yes, ma'am, kilt.
Yeah. So certainly the binary has been also changing over a period of time. And some changes we can see in the current Metro Men also. But for the third persons, what are the choices they have to pick up clothing? And trans, we are saying, in this context, we're talking of people who say we are neither men nor women.
Yes, ma'am.
What choices of clothing they have? What should they wear? They have to wear something, no?
Ma'am, like the normal women, like the biological women, I'm saying. So, like they don't always, just go outside wearing a bright sari and, like makeup and everything. So, why do the people who cross dress, why do they show their sexuality by clothing, which is and the system
Not all of them. No.
People.
All of them do not. Lakshmi is an exception. She is she likes to show off. No, she's very gaudy. When I met her, she had this long nails with golden nail polish and this many of gold bangles. So she likes. So some of the women, for me, for example, I wear big earrings, I wear necklaces, I dress up sometimes, especially if there's a function or something. And my faculty colleagues say, oh, you kind of carry yourself well. And we have also learned that on special occasions, we can also dress up. Otherwise, all women professors, women teachers in the faculty were dressed up very drab, no, kind of routine clothing. They were not thinking of showing off. So I think this is a personal choice in that sense. It's not because she is a trans. I think even when she was born a woman, she would have still worn things like that. We know Sumit Bodh. Look at Sumit Bodh. He's when you look appearance-wise, he's a very soft man. He's gay. He's a gay activist. He's an urban planner. He speaks fluent, very sophisticated English. He's very polite. He's not like the other men, the gay men who would want to project themselves as what we call a square, that by their actions, some of them. So it's an individual choices people make, that whether they want to look different, even though they are different and they want to look different. Some of the women would not want to be noticeable in the crowd. They want to mix up. So they will dress up very light colors and no makeup. Some of us would want to really, have the full makeup. Some of us will have mascaras and will have eyeliner. These are individual choices women also make. Okay. So you cannot say that Lakshmi is a stereotypical image of the trans woman. She is Lakshmi. She is an image of Lakshmi only. This is how she, and when you look at, she does mention in the video, the link I've said, that very few people have seen me without my makeup, and they don't recognize I'm the same Lakshmi. So she has created an image of herself, and most of us people do want to carry our image. For the men or for all, each one of us, I'm not saying men and women, each one of us creates a self-image. And we live by that image. Some of us like, I have friends who would not want to be seen without a proper eyebrows done and their waxing done and their hair should be proper. And I know a friend's mother-in-law who will be ashamed of going to a hairdresser if her hair had become too unruly. So she had to, for her, even going to the hairdresser was an issue of that, she cannot go with a completely unkept hair. And sometimes you go to the hairdresser to get your hair done. So that I would leave it much more to her individual personality rather than saying that all trans women dress up like that. The student we have in our final, Ray is her name. So when she came to the class, she came dressed up. In one class, she came dressed up as a woman, beautiful. When she was doing a session with the teachers, she had a sari, she had her jewelry, she had her makeup, she had everything on. She was dressed up very, very nicely. She came to another class with the students, and she was dressed up in her jeans and trousers. So she didn't bother about makeup or anything that day. So people make their choices of what they want to wear, and I think we should let them.
And it's a sort of assertion also. I mean, Lakshmi wearing a sari is a sort of message of her.
No, Medha is not only referring to her sari. One is it's a gaudy sari. Then there's a lot of makeup. And look at her, all these yellows and gold and all that. So she wants to be very visible. She came dressed up like that to the judicial training session. So she is 6 feet plus. She's very tall. So she's sitting there, standing there with all her glorious makeup and bright color. She usually wears red saris. So she's all there. And she stood there and says, "Am I visible to you?" And everybody is surprised at her question. Of course, she's such a visible presence. But she makes a point by that visibility that in law, do I exist? You can see me. So I'm kind of drawing your attention to me, to say I exist, I need rights, I need my property, I need my recognition of my existence. So she is making a statement with her dressing. She's making a point with her dressing. And I remember, at one point of time, we, the women teachers, were called by our seniors to say, you should be wearing saris when you come for your classes. And all of us were very aghast. Then for me, I said, you tell the men to wear dhotis, we will say wear saris. And tell the students not to wear saris, because there's no identity. And there was a male colleague of mine. He was also called by the senior colleagues, and he said, you stop wearing jeans. He said, I don't use my jeans in my teaching. But over time, I did realize that I do use my dressing as part of my teaching, because there are a lot of conversations we have by word and a lot of conversation by our appearances. And this is important for you also to learn, that when you are making an appearance in an e-platform also, in a formal setup, dress up formally. Do not come with your unkempt hair and a crumpled shirt or not. Once in one of my classes last semester, I think, one student came wearing a bandi. I said, no, you cannot come to my class wearing like that. So he, of course, immediately changed, and we said, no, we are going to be future lawyers. And we know that 3 days ago only, the High Court judge is lamenting that people are not paying attention to the communication techniques in e-platforms. They are driving a car and appearing in a court. They are running or they are climbing stairs and they are wanting to be audible. Yesterday, I think Ananya was outside and when we could not hear her. So somewhere we have to learn that we communicate through various modes, and when these people are dressing up in a certain manner, they want to communicate their identity by that dressing up. Each one of us do that, but we do that much more unconsciously. Remember, when you go to a party, you wear different kinds of clothes. When you go for, when you are at home, you wear different kinds of clothes. When you are going to faculty, you wear different kinds of clothes. You do not choose the same clothes for all the occasions. Why? Because you are making a statement by that clothing also. So clothing is a part of communication. And in Lakshmi's case, it's a very much part of assertion. Look at me, I exist, recognize my existence. In law, you can see it physically, but in law before Nalsa, they didn't exist for any legal purpose. That's why. So can we stop now today? Tomorrow we can continue. Well, and if you have any